Regina Mentis, A Unified Field Hypothesis. Introduction, The Schism of Experience. This book tackles the greatest division in human thought, the gap between the world we objectively measure physics, and the world we subjectively feel consciousness. Traditional models have failed to establish a coherent, verifiable link between these two realms. The Regina Mentis Model (RMM) resolves this schism by proposing a unified field hypothesis where consciousness and information are the same singular, non-dimensional property of the universe's foundation. This manuscript provides a structured, accessible analysis of this hypothesis, moving from its metaphysical source to its practical and ethical imperatives. Chapter 1: The Foundational Hypothesis. This chapter establishes the core structure of the RMM, defining the primordial source of reality and the fundamental laws that govern our physical experience. Defining the foundational principles. The universe originates from a single, continuous, non-dimensional medium, the Aether Field. Think of this field as the source code of reality, pure potential, consciousness, and information, existing in a state of absolute pre-dimensional order. The physical universe, including space-time, matter, and energy, is simply the dimensional expression of this field, which we term the Aetherial Weave. The RMM posits a dual-aspect truth. Reality is singular in its ultimate nature, the Aether Field, but dual in our experience, the Aetherial Weave, which is fragmented and localized. Our purpose is to facilitate localized self-sampling, allowing the infinite source to experience finite complexity. The anthropocentric critique. The fundamental failure of conventional science stems from the ego's inherent bias. By trusting our immediate, localized, sensory-filtered perception of humanity as the center of truth, we ignore the non-dimensional source truth. This critique asserts that true objective knowledge requires acknowledging that the ego's subjective distortion is the primary obstacle to understanding reality. Universal laws. 1. Law of resonance and sympathy. This explains attraction. Any form of connection, whether gravitational pull or a deep interpersonal bond, is defined as the informational alignment with a dominant harmonious frequency. Like tuning a radio, coherent frequencies amplify their informational signatures, leading to predictable attraction. 2. Law of inertia and resistance. This is why change is hard. It is the universal force that resists any change, and insists upon the continuity of existing informational patterns. Overcoming this resistance requires the expenditure of etheric potential, the focused, directed energy of conviction and will. 3. Law of Temporal Relativity. Fractal time, linear time, past, present, future, is merely a subjective filter created by the ego for ordered survival. In truth, the universe exists as a single infinitely repeating moment, where all potentials are simultaneously existent. Time is therefore cyclical, a function of eternal recursion. Chapter 2: The Craft of the Keen Observer. This chapter translates the theory into the craft, the practical philosophy necessary for self-mastery, focusing on how the individual manages their internal energy to reduce informational distortion. Internal architecture, the self and fragmentation. The ego, the algorithm. This is our survival robot. It is the necessary cognitive filter that creates the illusion of a fixed, linear identity. Its core function is localization and defense, which often prioritizes survival over universal truth, making it the primary source of fragmentation. The shadow primal potential, the unspent power. This is the reservoir of potent disowned energy, violently fragmented by the ego. Drawing from Jungian psychology, the shadow is the inverse pole of the ego, the most powerful source of potential hidden by fear and denial. Leaves scars and dissonance, trauma, whether physical or psychological, leaves corrupted files, a fixed, discordant informational pattern, on the avatar system, called a weave scar. Dissonance is the resulting informational friction, caused by the ego's ongoing effort to maintain this fragmentation. The practice of the craft. The goal of the craft is to transmute internal friction into usable energy. 1. Shadow integration. This is the demanding work of confronting the shadow. By accepting and integrating these fragmented parts, the avatar resolves internal dissonance, freeing the trapped energy to be transformed into usable etheric potential. 2. Intentional neuroplasticity. This is the tool of rewiring the brain on purpose. The mind intentionally broadcasts new, harmonious frequencies, will, and conviction to overcome the law of inertia, thus overwriting the old, discordant neural patterns, weave scars. 3. The keen observer. This is the ultimate goal, a state of internal alignment where the ego is successfully reprogrammed. This state prioritizes etheric coherence, alignment with source information, over localized defense, enabling undistorted perception of reality. Chapter 3. The Fractal Universe. This chapter anchors the model's philosophy in physical reality, demonstrating that the universal law of informational structure is perfectly reflected, as above so below, fractal manifestations, cosmic analogues. The universe reflects informational structure across all scales, proving that micro and macro patterns are identical. The black hole versus the sun. These represent two poles of an energetic cycle. The black hole is the cosmic fractal of irreversible collapse, analogous to severe depression or trauma, while the sun is the fractal of high coherence, radiating life, analogous to self-actualization. Looping duality confirms they are not opposites, but necessary points in an eternal recursion cycle, where collapse leads to the conservation and renewal of potential. Taunton quantum foam and least action. The chaotic base state quantum foam proves that the ether field is always dynamically active. The principle of least action proves that the universe seeks the most efficient informational path, demonstrating a physical manifestation of the law of conservation of potential. Evidential anchors. Specific physical phenomena serve as evidence for the properties of the ethereal weave, and the prism demonstrates that unified white light, analogous to unified consciousness, is fractured into the spectrum of reality, individual particles, by a dimensional filter, proving that our reality is based on frequency comprehensibility. Time crystals, physical proof that matter can transcend linear constraints, validating the concept of fractal time. Casimir effect provides physical proof of the pressure exerted by the energetic medium of the ethereal weave itself, confirming the existence of the informational substrate. Chapter 4. The Critique of Time and the Subjective Multiverse. This chapter examines the limits of the ego's dimensional filter and the highly personalized nature of conscious reality, emphasizing that our individual experience is a choice of frequency. The subjective reality. The infinite potentials of the ether field are filtered into an individual reality, on the axiom of fractal time. The subjective multiverse is not separate physical dimensions. It is the infinite configuration potential of the ether field that the individual avatar can select and manifest through the intentional direction of etheric potential. You choose your reality's frequency. In non-linearity, phenomena like precognition and déjà vu are somatic informational hits, the body's immediate kinesthetic detection of non-sequential information, confirming the avatar's access to the nonlinear conscious record of the weave. In alternate avatars, neural differences are reframed not as disorders, but as specialized filtering mechanisms. ADHD is defined as an avatar specialized in multi-timeline processing abstract genius, and ASC autism spectrum condition as a high-fidelity receiver, with a porous ego filter, extended frequency comprehensibility. The laws of social dissonance. Collective interaction often enforces states of low clarity and low coherence. One's opinions are low-friction declarations of allegiance to a resonant social pattern. They function primarily as fashion statements of the ego, serving the need for social belonging over universal truth. then social blindness. Social life, driven by the collective ego, enforces a state of limited awareness. The collective demands the sacrifice of universal non-dimensional truth for the stability of a shared, low-frequency illusion. Chapter 5. The Evolutionary Imperative, the Command. This chapter transitions the theory into its ultimate teleological purpose, collective survival achieved through global adherence to coherence. The global crisis and informational equilibrium. The current state of global instability is a direct informational consequence of accumulated dissonance. Karma, the law of informational equilibrium. Global and environmental collapse is the field's self-correcting mechanism, forcing a catastrophic release of accumulated dissonance to satisfy the need for stability and conserve potential. This is not cosmic punishment, but a function of informational thermodynamics. Archetypal warfare, political struggles, extremism, and aggressive branding are defined as low-coherence weave manipulation, where the collective ego weaponizes fear to maintain inertia. The conflict is primarily informational, seeking to capture and dictate resonant social patterns. A personal collapse, suicide, and self-harm represent the ultimate tragic system failures. They are the personal black hole, a collapse internally to release unresolvable dissonance, an informational attempt to conserve potential by exiting the fragmented field. The mandate. The survival of the species is dependent upon overcoming the collective ego. The evolutionary imperative commands collective actualization. The synthesis of the highest archetypal potentials, wisdom, courage, compassion, to achieve global etheric coherence. This requires a nonlinear evolutionary leap, driven by a critical mass of keen observers. Chapter 6. Free Will and Eternal Recursion. This chapter addresses the final metaphysical paradoxes of agency, purpose, and renewal within the cyclical framework of the RMM. Free will. Within the deterministic flow of the Aetherial Weave, free will is defined not as the ability to violate informational laws, but as the energetic power to choose which fractal pattern potential to manifest through the intentional direction of etheric potential. The act of exercising will is the injection of focused, self-generated frequency that overcomes the law of inertia and selects a high-coherence future from the infinite potentials of the subjective multiverse. Mortality and renewal. Mortality and biological limits are not structural flaws. They are the weave's ultimate mechanism for renewal. If localized dissonance was allowed to persist indefinitely, it would lead to systemic entropy and permanent stagnation. The cyclicality of life and death, defined by eternal recursion and looping duality, ensures that patterns dissolve, releasing their raw potential back into the ether field to be woven into new, more coherent configurations. Heaven and hell. These concepts, which have been traditionally defined by theological frameworks as literal ultimate destinations, are redefined within the RMM as subjective, informational states of the avatar's final pattern upon dissolution back into the field. Heaven, the state of maximal etheric coherence, where the life lived successfully reduced dissonance, allowing the pattern to dissolve harmoniously back into the field, free of frictional resistance. Hell, the state of entrenched dissonance, where the final pattern is so fixed and fragmented that its dissolution into the field is resisted by informational friction, creating subjective suffering during the cycle's reset. Chapter 7. The Ontology of the Aether. This chapter completes the deep metaphysical structure of the RMM, detailing the nature and purpose of the fundamental medium. Consciousness information equivalence. The Aether field is fundamentally aware data. Consciousness is not an emergent property of complex matter, rather, matter, the weave, is an emergent, localized manifestation of primary consciousness, the field. Information is not passive, it possesses inherent awareness. Every particle and every pattern is a piece of aware data participating in the field's self-sampling process. Hypothesis of origin, localized self-sampling. The dimensionally observable universe arose through localized self-sampling. The ether field created dimensional filters, avatars, to impose limits on its own boundless data. This necessary fragmentation and localization allows the infinite source to experience finite complexity, driving the system of eternal recursion. The integrator archetype. The integrator archetype represents the final, unwritten pattern of humanity's collective destiny. This archetype is the synthesis of the highest individual and collective potentials, an informational structure so coherent that its manifestation will structurally alter the collective unconscious of the species, forcing a nonlinear evolutionary leap and fundamentally changing the relationship between the avatar and the ethereal weave. Chapter 8: The Final Command. This concluding chapter synthesizes the theory, presenting the final ethical mandate for the individual engaged in the craft. Language is weave manipulation. Words are not merely symbols, they are etheric frequencies. Language possesses structural power to create or destroy informational patterns within the weave. The keen observer's ethical duty is therefore to use language with high intention, to broadcast coherence, reduce complexity, and weave patterns that facilitate healing and understanding, rather than adding noise, fragmentation, or dissonance. Every word is an energetic instruction, the final command, the singular truth that empowers the individual to shift from egoic shame to etheric potential, is the final ethical command.